Um, Obviously, just I guess the opening statement part of it, just excited to get game one under our belts, excited about getting out of it with a win. Um, Proud of our guys. A lot just kind of putting that into conclusion. Proud of our guys, the way they competed. We didn't always play well, but we played well enough to win. We were excited to get out of there with a win. Competed, but we also talked about just some of our effort as a football team, offensively, defensively, special teams, where we need to strain more. A lot of times those will get glossed over in a win, and so we took a lot of time yesterday in a team meeting to talk about it as position coaches, head coach, players, just demanding more out of ourselves and pushing our effort level harder and just being honest in how we're going to approach, as a program, just coaching harder, practicing harder after wins, not taking our foot off the gas. Also addressed just some of the penalties. We had way too many in week one. Told the guys I'll eat some of the aggressive penalties, some of the aggressive penalties in terms of, face mask, holding, things like that that's going to happen. But we've got to work to use proper technique to where we don't put ourselves in those positions, whether it be pass interference calls or holding calls or things like that. But a lot of stuff to clean up. So we've put it to bed. 24-hour rule, moved on. Right now our roster has remained the same from last week. Just an update on Ellis Jefferson, suffered a concussion, and we're waiting to see what's wrong with his knee right now. It's still inconclusive there, but he's in concussion protocol, so he's questionable for Saturday. But really excited to move on to week two. Really excited about this game specifically. It's a great rivalry for both schools to have the bucket back, and it'll be the first FBS game in the city of Houston, this year. So it'll be a great time for our city and a great day for our city, and really looking forward to it.
You touched on it, the thoughts about renewing the rivalry with Rice and what that means to you and both programs.
Well, I mean, for the players, who haven't, really, dove into the history of the rivalry, it's a game to them. It's week 2 or week 3 for Rice. But for the schools and the alumni in the city of Houston who've been here for a long time, it's a rivalry that everybody's glad has been renewed, and it's another home game for both teams, and it gives us an opportunity and Rice another opportunity to play in the city in front of recruits and high schools that they recruit very hard as well. And so overall, it's just a positive. It's a total positive for our city and for both universities.
Major, you were part of one Bayou bucket when you were at Rice. I believe it was a really close game. When you look at those kind of rivalries at Texas, you had Oklahoma and a couple of others, A&M, and I think USC. Just what do these mean rivalry-wise in a city to have two schools this close, and particularly your when you were in it?
Well, it's bragging rights. It's bragging rights from that standpoint. And that's something that's always up in the rivalries, and this happens to be not so much statewide as it is just citywide. Having the opportunity, I remember, being in some rivalry games, as a player, you run into a lot of those players. A lot of these guys you either played with or you played against in district play or even in playoff games. So most of these guys are going to have played against each other or with each other. So the bragging rights from that standpoint. But it's just great to have it back for the city of Houston. That's what I gather out of this. It's great to have it back, and both universities playing each other and having something that the city of Houston can get behind.
Can you talk about the game that Ed Oliver had? I mean, defensive player of the week in the conference.
Right.
He was all over the place.
Yeah, he's played with great effort. Phenomenal effort, and he just needs to continue to keep playing like that. We need others to play with that effort around him. There were some times and some instances in which you look at the effort and it doesn't necessarily reflect the score. This is a team that ran for over 500 yards in their last 2 ball games, and you hold them to 150, 160 yards or so, and you see Ed's effort, and sometimes you look at just the stat line at 16 points and rushing yards, and you think, hey, we did a great job. But what we've got to go back and look and see is, all right, look at the way number 10's playing with his effort, and are we all playing that same way? And so we have to play harder on that side of the football and on the offensive side as well, but we can be better is what I'm getting at. I know that doesn't answer your question directly about Ed, but we need more to play like that.
Major, you had mentioned the penalties early on, and the aggressive ones, but was it also, I mean, can you attribute some of it to first game, jitters and that kind of stuff, where these aren't necessarily things you'll see in week 4 or week 5?
Yeah, there were 3 specifically that stood out. 2 on punt team. There was one miscommunication in terms of cadence, couldn't hear. Then we had another one that was just a lack of focus, or 4, excuse me. One was just a lack of focus. So those 2 on punt. One was cadence. One was just lack of focus. We had another administrative penalty on offense, and a wide receiver just moving his alignment too abruptly that caused another penalty. And then we had one where our offensive tackle thought that our back was down, thought that the whistle had been blown, and was honestly trying to pick the guy up. Didn't know that the whistle hadn't been blown, so we got called for assisting a runner. So those are some things that kind of happen on week 1 that are just new penalties that you have to cover with the guys. And then we can learn better from offensive pass interference. We've talked about that. We've gone over it numerous times as a staff. They're going to enforce the leaping rule this year. They're going to enforce offensive pass interference more. They're going to enforce sideline warnings more and penalties. So these are things you can keep hammering and hammering and hammering. Sometimes, again, you have to learn by experience. But we talked about the physical errors and how we got in position to get a face mask, how we got in a position to get offensive and defensive pass interference. Are there things that we can do at the front of the play, technique-wise, that doesn't cause that at the back end?
Coach, were you satisfied with what you got out of the offense this past weekend? And 2, if you can, you mentioned about the leaping rule. It was kind of confusing the way it was explained all by the analysts, but on both of those 2 points, offense and the leaping.
Yes, sir. Offensively, the thing that was disappointing was our red zone. This game we've got to score touchdowns in the red zone, and we got down early, had an opportunity to score. We don't handle the ball right, and it pushes us back into a further situation. Then another time we had to settle for a field goal, and penalties brought us back out of the red zone. Another time with an offensive pass interference. So, we've got to score touchdowns in the red zone. There's some things that we did specifically as coaches to be fairly simple with the guys, so we wouldn't go in and have a lot of first game mistakes. They did a lot of things that were very multiple up front, so we didn't want to create a bunch of scheme. We wanted to stay simple. But we talked about the turnovers. One was a 4th down, call where, honestly, you don't ever want to see the ball turned over, but for what the quarterback had at that point, making a throw towards the end zone, ball's picked off on 4th down, it's as good as a punt from where we were going from. But we still want to clean that up. And we talked about that as an offensive staff, how we can better attack 4th and 4, 4th and 5. And then the other one late in the game, we're trying to stay aggressive offensively and not be conservative. So we come off the sideline and we throw a route to our best receiver and we slip and we fall down and they make a play on it at a critical portion of the game where you've got a decision to make. Do you keep the foot on the gas or do you start playing very conservatively? And we wanted to continue to go down and score. Our defense was playing well, and if we can get this thing back to a 2-score game, we're in full control of it. So turnovers, number 1, can't have those. Number 2, we've got to score touchdowns in the red zone. We were efficient on 1st down, which put us in some good third down situations. We were 1 away from our goal of being 48% conversion on 3rd down, but those are the 3 things specifically. And then there's a lot of just game management stuff in terms of just communicating signals, getting on and off the field quicker, getting lined up, and when we go pace and we want to go faster, getting lined up quicker. And then,
Coach, with
the leaping rule, the way it's been explained to me is you can jump vertical. You can jump all you want, but if you come down on top of the deep snapper or you leap through a gap anymore, it's a penalty.
Coach, can you talk about the team getting back on track, being out of town for a week or so training and then the first game being canceled? Are they getting back on an even keel, everything getting back to normal, or are you still seeing some issues?
No, it's getting back to normal. And I think the kids would tell you, it is normal. It is normal. They're very resilient and very malleable. These guys they'll adjust to anything, and that's what we talked about. Very proud of you doing that. Let's kind of flush that out of our minds. There's no more getting to. We're back. We've had a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with classes in session. We've had a Friday walkthrough. We've had Saturday at the hotel. We're in the season now, so it's all about creating routine. That was one thing that Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman came down in our Champions talk, and it really pounded home to our football team during that Champions meeting about how important a routine is and how those 2 guys operate with the routine and how they've overcome injuries and setbacks because of their routine and how they prepare themselves through their routine. And that's something that we pound in with coaches, that all the great ones have routine in what they do. And now they'll vary it up, the intensity and the volume of it, but they all have a great routine in what they're doing. So we continue to pound that weekly.
Coach, Rice had a bounce-back game against UTEP. What do you see as the biggest challenges when you're looking at them?
Well, you know, they're very well coached and very experienced staff. You know, offensively, they do a lot of things. They'll come from the huddle. They can play with pace if they want to. A lot of different personnel groupings, motioning, shifting, you know, trying to, you know, eye violation with the defense, trying to get their eyes in the wrong place, and they do a great job of executing it. Got two backs that have run really well. Glazman, their quarterback, has handled their scheme very well from an offensive standpoint. And they do a lot of things on offense formationally, motioning and shifting to try to, you know, present a lot of issues. Defensively, they'll play multiple fronts. They'll play 3-down, 4-down fronts. They'll mix up their coverage zone and man. They do a really good job, very sound. You know, when you just watch them as a football team, they're in the right place. Offense, defense, special teams, very seldom are there miscues. They're where they're supposed to be. So they're going to present a great challenge. And more than just being a sound unit, they play hard. They play really hard. And that's one thing that shows up on tape. It's a great compliment to them. They play hard on all phases of the game.
Coach Applewhite, can you speak to the chemistry between your quarterback and your receivers, although it be in the first game?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's the chemistry thing. It develops as you go. You know, it develops as you go throughout the season, but I don't really know that word very well as a quarterback, former player. I mean, the more you throw, the better you get timing, you know, anticipation and routes. I didn't see anything that was completely out of sync or anything from that standpoint. The thing that we just keep driving home in practice is how we practice is how we play. How we practice is how we play. And you always hear on Saturdays, you know, their timing is off, their timing is off. So we spend a lot of time when we go routes on air, we go 7-on-7 segments and we're working the passing game, it's got to be full speed. It's got to be full speed. And if you're not in all, you know, all of a sudden on game day now you're playing at full speed, then the timing's not there. So we spend a lot of time talking about, you know, practicing at game speed, and you got to be careful and smart with your wide receivers in terms of keeping their legs fresh. But if you truly want to have that anticipation and that timing in your passing game, you've got to practice that way all week. And there were some times where it showed up and it looked really good Saturday night. There were some times where we can be, you know, more on time and sharper on some things.
Major, in terms of the personnel that you sent out there to start the game, I'm not sure if it's, you know, sometimes one guy will go in for a first play and you immediately sub and do some things. So I don't know if it's indicative, but at corner, you had Alexander Myers, and then I believe Isaiah Johnson started at the other corner. Is that kind of the way it is, or is there a lot of wiggle room in terms of how you're going to be moving, you know, 3 or 4 guys in?
Yeah, we've, you know, with playing the pace teams, we've got to, you know, play 3-4 corners a game. You know, and people take vertical shots on you, and you know, then they roll another guy in. You've got to think about having a fresh corner in there. You don't want a guy steady taking bullets. So we're going to, you know, rotate guys at the corner spot. Same thing we would do as a wide receiver position as well, just to try to keep those guys' legs fresh throughout a game. There's a certain trust factor with your starters, and we found that out in 15. Here is there was a certain trust factor with a DeMarcus Ayers, with a Chance Allen, you know, with a Steve Dunbar, and then we saw about 5-6 games into the season, these guys are playing 65, 70, 80 snaps a game, and then they're starting to get fatigued. So, you know, there's a fine line you balance between putting some subs in, and, you know, there's a reason a guy's a starter, but you're also trying to make sure that this guy can last throughout the entirety of the game. So that's one of those things that, you know, other than the very objective turnovers, red zone, better tackling, creating more turnovers, the very objective things, those are the things that we kind of talk about as a staff is how do we rotate, sub our players, continue to keep our players fresh. You learn that after game one, and the players feel that. You know, they come off the field, all right, that's what a game feels like. I know what those scrimmages felt like. I know what those team periods felt like, but that's what a game felt like, and now I really, really know with all the pressure mentally and the anxiety of just performing throughout the course of a game, this is how I need to prepare myself throughout the week. This is how I need to sleep. This is how I need to eat. This is how I need to hydrate. So I thought it was really good to have a night game, all the adversity that you could fit into it. Good opponent on the road, night game, late game. hot, dry, all those things really helped us understand what we need to do to be prepared.
Building off of that, with Isaiah Johnson, his first game being live after the switchover in the spring, what did you guys take away, some positives and negatives? Being young at the position, how did you guys feel he did during the game?
There were some really good things he did, and you saw some corrections in the game. I literally saw a sprint out to the right where we throw a hitch and he misses a tackle, and then we come back the next series and same play, same throw, same catch, and the tackle's made for a 2-yard gain, 3-yard gain. So I could see him correcting some of those things as the game went on. That I was very encouraged by, and addressed that with the entire team. Is that after week 1, we've got to grow, we've got to learn about ourselves, and there's a lot of guys in this room that have played a lot of snaps that have that thought in their head of I got this. You don't. Open yourselves up. Listen to your coaches. Let's get better. Find whatever percentage that is that I can improve, whether it's technique, whether it's mental assignment, whether it's just pure effort, whatever it is, open yourself up. Then there's other guys who haven't played a lot of football or have played a new position like Isaiah that should be an open book. Hey, this was my first at bat. Tell me where I can get better. Where can I improve? And so, I know him specifically, that he'll spend a lot of time with Coach Jennings. He'll be in there all day today and continue to get better. And that's the biggest part of getting better is attitude and being there. And so he'll be there this week. I know that.
Major first, if Jefferson can't go, is that Leday that you slide in there? Or?
Yeah, well, John, if Ellis can't go, Keith Corbin would be the starter outside right now. So Dunbar and Corbin would be starting outside with Bonner in the slot. Leday, Courtney Lark, Terry Mart, Derek McLemore, all of those guys will be playing in backup roles, and we'll continue to evaluate Derek King.
Right. And you had 3 true freshmen, I think, got in the game, Stewart, Parker, and Eckenberger, and Anini. No?
Play.
Okay, he was on the, I'm sorry. And Anini, was it Anini?
Anini.
Yeah, those two. Anything in terms of getting them in there, and I know you evaluate in camp who you think will have a chance, or those